Hey, welcome everyone. This is Aaron. Thank you for coming and checking out another episode of the Rebel Alliance podcast. And we are super late today. Today's been a crazy day, but we didn't have an episode yesterday. So there were some things I wanted to get to today. So we're making this happen. And I'm not sure how long this one's going to go today, but I got a few things that we're going to cover. And one of it is going to be the update for Amos Miller's case. And then we're going to be talking about, safeguarding your business using private membership associations and if it even can be done. So that being said, let me get my mouse to where I need it to be. I need one more screen on here and then I'll be good to go. And let's take care of some housekeeping. So if you are looking for more content, more blog posts, past episodes, maybe you're looking for DIY templates or just looking for some ways to help out this broadcast, podcast, you can head over to the PMA Manifesto or eastcoastpma.com. And then if you are looking for DIY templates, you can get them at either spot. So you can either go to the PMAmanifesto.com or East Coast PMA. And we do have our monthly call coming up. I think it's tomorrow. So Wednesday, Erica usually lets people into the Facebook group. So make sure you get over there or into the Telegram group for East Coast PMA or the East Coast PMA Facebook group. And I'll make sure that you get notification of when we are going live so you can jump on if you are not part of the newsletter over at the PMA Manifesto. So that being said, there are definitely some ways you can assist with this this podcast, and that's by going over to East Coast PMA. There's a bunch of links over there you can utilize, or you can just help share the broadcast, which would be great to get more people on. The larger our audience grows, the better chance I have of getting on individuals for interviews and stuff like that. Now we do have somebody from Start 9 coming on. I'm going to be meeting with them tomorrow, and then they will be coming out here to talk about all the benefits of having a Start 9 system. And I know you guys have heard it from me why I love mine so much. Not only does it allow me to have, Jason Bourne type end-to-end encryption, super secret squirrel stuff, to running my own Lightning node, to running my own form of PayPal using Bitcoin, but I can also do a bunch of other things with it, which is pretty amazing. And the best part is if whatever I put on there, I can access from anywhere in the world as long as there's electricity in my house and the internet's up and running. So that being said, if you are looking to pick up a system, if you go over to Start 9 and buy one, use the code Rebel Alliance at checkout, you will get 9% off your purchase. So that being said, also in the show notes, for those of you who aren't stacking sats or not even sure what that is, eventually I'll go into that, but there are two different cards one card you can use to stack sats, and that is the fold card. And the fold card basically works like a debit card. You put money onto it, and then when you use that money, you can buy satoshis or small amounts of Bitcoin through that and then store that, or you can buy gift cards and get rebates back. So let's say I'm making an Amazon purchase, I'll purchase a gift card for $500 to there, I'll get 25,000 satoshis back. I think it's like a few bucks. And then as Bitcoin rises, like it just went over 60 grand, that value in those sats go up, so you can store those. But we'll get into all that and how all that works. But that being said, I'm going to turn on the comments here. So if you do have any questions about what we're talking about, feel free to jump on. I know Facebook and YouTube will post those, so I can see them in the back end here through Yardstream. And then if you're on Rumble, well, I'll have to answer those later. But that being said, let's get into the Amos Miller stuff. So we've been following this case. We know that this case has been going on for a while. He was doing some what I would call Patriot mythology stuff, trying to defend himself, probably listening to some of these other individuals online, and then ended up getting Robert Barnes after going through a couple other attorneys. So in January of this year, the Pennsylvania Agricultural Bureau, whatever you want to call them, state troopers raided his farm and seized a bunch of products, even though he had already gone through the court system and worked some things out with them, got some things reduced. They just showed up for with this warrant, and then started taking stuff and labeling stuff not for sale, not for use, because they were trying to connect 3 cases of E. coli across the U.S. back to Amos Miller, even though during the court proceedings, nobody came forward and said they had ever gotten sick. And over the last, I think it was 20 years or something, he's been operating. There's been nobody that's come forward and said that they've been harmed from him. So they went over 4 hours of deliberation on February 29th of 2024. And then Judge Thomas Spangala, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, from everything that I got online, I tried to get the actual court documents to share with everybody, but my Pacer account, I think is what it's called, wasn't working for some reason. I couldn't log in and get anything that was updated. It was all older stuff from earlier this year and last year. But from my understanding, it's a preliminary temporary injunction. They ruled on it on March 1st in favor of the state. So basically, a preliminary injunction is a temporary relief that preserves the status quo until the courts decide on merits of the case. The relief sought often involves asking the court to prevent an opposing party from taking a specific action or continuing a current course of action. And so that is basically the court telling them, or telling Amos, that listen, you can't, they don't want him to feed his pigs, certain stuff. They don't want him to sell anything to his members, even though he has that right as an association, even if it is considered an expressive association. There was over, I think, 1,000 people that showed up in protest of this in Lancaster. I'm probably saying that wrong, but that's how everybody else says it, so I'm going with it. And basically, they're saying that until this either is finalized or goes through an appeal process or anything like that, he can't do anything. So he is basically stuck from selling anything. He can only produce stuff for his immediate family, which kind of brings me back to the whole intimate association. So there's some stuff you can search on YouTube. There's one lady that does a lot of farm stuff. She had a real good report. She was there. She was actually interviewing people, and she didn't come across one person that said, no, he shouldn't be operating like this. It was, everybody was like, hey, either I am one that purchases from him, I have somebody that purchases from him, or I just believe it is your right as a farmer and an individual to be able to choose what type of food and produce you want to put into your body. And the government has no reason to tell you what you should or should not be eating. If I want to eat a McDonald's cheeseburger for the next 90 days because that's what I want to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's my prerogative. Probably won't be the best thing for me, but it's my choice, and the government shouldn't be able to tell me what I can and cannot put into my body personally. So that being said, there was a news reporter from CBS 21, and Miller had said, I think the judge isn't working for we the people. And then he also said, quote, if we do, I guess they were asking about if he will, if they will eventually get a license, because they said there's other Amish and Mennonite farmers, but they are regulated and licensed through Pennsylvania, and he doesn't want to do that. Don't blame him. But he says if we do that, it wouldn't allow us to provide the nutrition dense food our members really want. Those are very important foods members really want for healing purposes. That's how Miller explained it, unquote. And that is because with everything that he does not process anything within any USDA facility. And they got him for labeling and interstate commerce, all this other nonsense, because he was shipping stuff all over the US. But if there's somebody that has some cancer element or somebody that has intestinal problems, consuming the whole raw milk and the way that it is processed, that he does it, it's very natural, nothing's added to it, has a lot of health benefits. And again, if you are healthy, the government can't make money off you, or big pharma can't make money off you. So what are some of the next steps? Basically, he can comply or he can appeal. Miller will have to comply with the terms of the injunction until the case is finalized. He can appeal it, which I'm sure is exactly what's going to happen. This case is going to continue to go on. Hopefully, maybe if they do work something out through some type of arbitration, that maybe there is some type of licensing where he lets inspectors come in, but he doesn't have to use USDA stuff. Unfortunately, there is some type of give and take because, like I say 100 times on here before, none of us have pockets deep enough to fight the swamp that is our government. They'll have a discovery and evidence gathering, probably some more of that. They'll prepare for the appeal, schedule the appeal or the trial, and then there'll be final judgment and stuff like that. I think personally, this case is going to go further up through the ranks of the court, and is going to come out of Pennsylvania, because you are now really treading on the liberties of individuals for that privacy, for that right to choose what they can consume. It's not like they're, if he was probably selling fentanyl and he was an illegal immigrant, it probably wouldn't be a problem. But because he's not, this is what we have to deal with. So that is kind of just kind of the update on what's been going on with Miller. So, how does this all play into safeguarding your business, private membership associations, and stuff like that? So, there is a lot of talk online that if you have a association, PMA as they put it, that you can do basically whatever you want. You can have any type of business in it. You're protected. You're in the private. You don't have to answer to any local or town officials or anything like that. And I got cable issues as always. So let's get that out of the way. So that being said, what are some of uh let's see here where I want to pull this up here if I can find what I was looking for. What are some of the where was I? Thought I had my notes straightened out, but I guess not. Um, so let's talk about some of the legal framework. Wow, my notes are really messed up on this. All right, so with some of the legal framework and autonomy, let's see. Let me just put that to voicemail. Okay. Um, Associations are based off of private contracts, right? And you'll hear a lot of terms kicked around as maritime law, common law, statutory law, all this type of stuff. And we're going to kind of push all that to the side right now and just look at contract law. And PMAs operate under the principle of freedom of association, right protected under many legal systems. And for us, it's the First and 14th Amendment, along with some others, and it allows them to create a private governance structure based on contracts agreed upon by all members. So, and past episodes, we've gone through what the membership requirements are, your articles of organization, your bylaws, your membership agreement, your alternative dispute resolution, different positions within the association, everything like that. And the association is based on a contractual agreement between you and your members, and then the the thing that gets pushed around a lot is that they are regulatory exempt from certain things, and to an extent that is true. But I think the problem is with most individuals online will tell you that if you have an association, all these people that push the PMAs, uh, that you can do whatever you want and you can have whatever you want. And that's just not the case. So some of the advantages that we've talked about before with a PMA is you have the flexibility to operate in a private space between you and your members. You can offer services, products, classes, and you're more flexible with how those are handled within your association as opposed to a public entity that has to comply with all public rules, regulations, licensing, stuff like that. You have also privacy, which is also a big thing, right? So you might be challenged, like we've seen here in Connecticut and elsewhere, and just like Amos Miller, but he didn't have to give up his members list, or he shouldn't have. He doesn't have to say who his members are. He can just say, "Yeah, I've got 4,000 members, and these are the states they live in. These are their age ranges." But you don't have to give them specific information because we have court cases that back that up. And then with your association, or if you're running your whatever your association's designed for. And I really probably shouldn't have used the word business, because when you think of business, like, hey, I'm going to run a convenience store that's association, it may or may not work, just for an example, but you can tailor the services that you provide to your members and that your members provide to other members, because you're going to naturally have that connection, that community building of whatever it is that you're doing, your reason for association to then start to have those transactions happen. So, what are some of the uh, challenges that you might run into with an association? So, because I don't have the screen up for comments, let me just pop that up real quick. All right, we got nothing here, but if you are watching, you do want to give a comment or a shout out, let me know. I will go back. So, I just have my notes here on another screen. So, you're going to have tax implications. So, as we talked about before, a lot of the bad information out there is that if you have a association that is faith-based, doesn't mean you can't have a faith-based association or association that is based in nature or health or what have you. But when you hear individuals, and just pick any of the websites out there that will say that if you have a faith-based association, you're tax exempt under the 508c1a tax code, which is completely false, because that is only designated for churches, and churches cover mosques, synagogues, temples, everything like that. It's a place of worship, and they actually have 14 points that the IRS looks at to see if you're operating as a properly formed church. So you will have some tax implications. And everybody's looking for a way not to pay taxes. So am I. And the easiest way that I find to do it is alternative currencies, bartering, that sort of thing. It may not keep the lights on, but it's a way that you can supplement with what you're doing. So, um, in most cases, depending on where you are, again, this is really um, dependent on your jurisdiction or your location, your geographical location, how associations are looked at. In most cases, they're going to be looked at as partnerships. So whoever's running the association will be treated for tax purposes as a partnership. And as always, this doesn't constitute tax legal advice. It's just my opinion on the topic. So that being said, one other con to this or challenges is that getting members to come, right? You're not open to the public, so not everybody can just walk in. So a lot of it's going to be by word of mouth. So limited public interaction could be a con for some people, or something to consider if you have a small network or a small circle, how you're going to bring people into your association. And then one of the other things that could be a challenge is, your membership and management of your membership, keeping track of members, stuff like that. It is, a lot of people make this sound like it's really easy, but it is running a business, so to speak. You are running an organization. You have to treat it as such. So let's talk a little bit about, some of the kind of, yeah, we'll talk about this. We're going to talk about exemptions. So there are some exemptions to some of this stuff. And this is what I think people kind of over embellish online when it comes to some of the exemptions. So you'll hear a lot that, oh, you're in the private domain, you operate privately, you don't have to answer to anybody. And that's to some extent true, depending on what you're doing. So the basis for some of the regulations, exemptions, I guess we'll call it, is you have the private versus the public. So the associations operate on the principle that they are private organizations. Again, it's a contractual agreement between you and your members. Uh, and unlike public businesses that offer services that are open for public accommodation to the general public, anybody can walk in off the street and see what you're selling. Associations only serve their members. So one of the arguments is, and this is what I think, I don't know how they're arguing it with Amos, but one of the things should be is not only is, do we have the right to consume what we want as adults, as long as, well, I guess you can consume whatever you want. You want to consume crack all day, like, Hunter Biden, then go for it. But again, the government shouldn't come in and say, hey, you can't consume red dye number 4 unless well, maybe that's not a good example, but you should be able to consume what you want within reason, I guess is the best way to put it. So if you want to, I think most of us don't want to consume red dye number 4, but if you want to consume raw milk, then that is your option as an adult. And I think, yes, there's that fight there and the labeling and stuff like that, which is just kind of ridiculous, but they should also be fighting on the right of association, because the association, or PMA, whatever you like to call it, serves only their members. They're not offering public accommodation. They have exclusivity to their membership. They're not all open for everyone. So this is something that I think is this distinction needs to be made, is crucial to be made, because a lot of people think that if they have an association, they can just let whoever they want in. And that then opens you up for to be inspected, to be put under the microscope of whether you're actually running a association correctly, or if you're just doing something that is, open to the general public to ensure, yeah, it's just something that's open to the public. So basically what I had here is that associations serve only their members. This is a distinction is crucial because many regulations are designated to protect the general public and ensure public accountability of businesses. And that shouldn't be the case with associations. And somebody, because everybody's home from out and about today, is printing something on the printer. So I'm sorry if you hear that in the background. The next thing is contractual governance. Associations are governed by the private contract, the agreement between the members. That's your bylaws, your articles of organization, and your membership agreement. And I think we could argue that their operations are a matter of private concern and not public, right? I'm meeting with other adults that are like-minded, that want to come together for this certain reason of association, whether it's health care or a holistic lifestyle, homesteading, Maybe it's, a more formalized Bitcoin meetup or something like that, where you're getting together to talk cryptocurrencies and everything like that. So I think you can make that argument that their operation is of private matter and not really concerning to the public, because it's not open to the public. It's not interacting with the public. Now, if you have a association that rents a commercial spot, let's say in a strip mall, well, that might be a little bit different. You're going to be kind of putting yourself out on Front Street, and maybe that's not the best location because you're going to draw undue attention to yourself. Um, so I think with that in mind, I think there can be made that argument that we can be exempt from certain public regulations um, that don't apply to individuals that have private agreements among themselves, right? So I used to use the analogy of, if my nephew wanted to come over and mow my lawn, if I had one, once a week, and I wanted to pay him $1,500 for the summer or whatever it is, and we write up an agreement that's between him and I. There's no need for any local government agency to be involved within that contract, because it's between us. And unless somebody breaches that contract and we can't come to some agreement to satisfy that breach, then that's when you end up in the court system. But again, we want to avoid that at all necessary costs. um, so some of the things that I think are kind of a gray area in most cases when you're talking about having, safeguarding for your business using an association. So I think there are some real benefits to it, but at the same time, I think there are probably better ways of going at it, or multiple layers that you can use for defense, as I've always said before. So licensing requirements, um, in some cases, if you're a Reiki healer, if you are a natural homeopathic healer, uh, you may in your area not need a license to run that through your association. And again, if you're doing it properly, where it's between you, your member, and a fence post, really nobody else should be involved. But if you're all over Facebook and advertising, then you're going to have undue wanted attention. But again, we've run into situations where health boards have come down hard on masseuses who say no. And again, this was early on. So I think people were getting involved in associations, not really understanding what they are. Because again, they're not really set up for business, even though transactions happen within the association. So I guess it's uh, kind of a way of looking at it, is that yes, you can safeguard your businesses, but it's more your personal business, not like, hey, I'm running a plumbing business or an electrical business that is an association, right? So we saw a lot of masseuses get challenged really early on, didn't know what they really got into, bought documents from somebody and just folded up shop, as opposed to saying, okay, well, the association may not be subject to these licensing requirements for services provided exclusively to their members. So if I'm only massaging, Mr. Smith every Tuesday, and that's between him and I, and he's part of the association, but also he's learning how to, do Reiki healing himself, or use essential oils, and there's other classes that I'm teaching, and part of that happens to be they offer, I offer massages to members. Well, then that's again between us, and I don't think I should be licensed for that. But again, be prepared for the challenge, because it's going to happen, because now we are taking ourselves out of that licensing requirement system. And again, some licenses I think are required. Again, I'm not here to say whether they should be or not. It's just kind of my thought process on using associations with your private business that happens within your association. So zoning laws, we talked about this before. I haven't really found a way around this. Zoning is a pain in the arse, no matter how you look at it. uh, Again, you could argue that, hey, we are a private association, we are unincorporated association, we're only meeting with our members, we're only doing certain things. But again, we're not open to the public, we don't offer public accommodation, blah blah blah. But again, how many of us really want to go and argue that and fight at every turn? It's like the individuals that say, "Hey, I don't need a license to drive." You may be very well right, and there's court cases and stuff that back that up. But again, do you want to spend the next 40 years of your life every time you take a right hand turn on red and get pulled over because the cop or the road pirate wants to pull you over because you have a plate that says private property or whatever, and now you have to fight for your right of driving without a license, right? So again, there's better ways to spend your energy than fighting at every corner with the road pirates to have to say, yes, I can drive without a license, right? So that's kind of how I look at this. There's some things that I have no problem giving as long as I'm getting some stuff back and I'm being left alone. So again, it all comes down to how you as an individual want to run your association, what your risk tolerance is, and which way you want to go. So, like I tell a lot of people, I'd rather use crypto, lightning payments, cash, Liberty Dollar, gold backs, that sort of thing, than use my have somebody pay me with a debit or a credit card, right? Because again, it's more private, it's not being tracked. But anyways, the next thing you kind of touched this health and safety regulations. Again, one of the things I talk about is if you where we see a lot of the challenges is either dairy products or education. For some reason, for the most part, for right now, those that are in the natural holistic healthcare community sphere space, whatever you want to call it, aren't really challenged that often, not as much, at least I hear, as the local farmers or the ones that are doing, co-ops and stuff like that for food shares and that sort of thing. So again, kind of the same thing. We could argue that, these regulations don't apply because of the same extent as that we're only serving our members. Again, you'd have to build your case and argue this. And this is why I wanted to kind of talk about the safeguarding of your business with a private association, because I think so many people out there think that once I get this, it's, the Wild West. I can do what I want. And it's really not, because these are some of the things that you're going to come into. So, some of the legal considerations that we're going to look at is, you're going to be challenged. Associations may be faced with legal challenges regarding their claim to exemption from public regulation. Authorities might scrutinize the genuine private nature of the association, whether the services provide could impact health and safety. So somebody on YouTube the other day posted that about a clear and present danger. Yes, that was tossed around early on. I think it has its place. But again, it's not necessarily just a clear and present danger. It could be, hey, like with Amos, oh, well, there's E. coli. So we're going to shut you down. How many times have you seen a recall for a bag of lettuce or something along those lines where it has had E. coli, tested positive for E. coli, and they have to recall thousands of bags, and you've already gotten like 1,500 people sick from it, right? He doesn't have anybody. They have supposedly 3 that they can't even produce. But anyways, so you're going to have some legal challenges. I just want everybody to be aware of that. Even if you're doing this to protect your business, you want to have those layers of defense, and you want to make sure that you're prepared for any challenges that might come your way. And if you're not, that you have the funds available to hire somebody to fight this for you. Now, compliance and that's going to be another thing that you're going to have to navigate within the legal boundaries. Especially like we're talking about taxes. That taxes and like zoning and stuff like that, those are certain compliance things that I haven't found a way around them. Maybe you have, and again, there's nothing that I've done or that I've come across that I can say, hey, wholeheartedly, this is what you should do, not to do this, not to pay taxes or to get around zoning, stuff like that. It's just kind of a case by case basis. But again, the last thing I want is for anybody to end up in club fed. So if you got to be looked at as a partnership for your association and pay taxes that way, then so be it. But again, it's whatever your comfort level is. If you say, nope, I'm not doing that, and I'm not going to pay taxes, and I'm going to, get my birth certificate certified and get access to my supposedly straw man account, my all capital letter name, and go that route, then so be it. That's completely up to you. I'm just telling you my thoughts on this topic. So there's also state specific laws. And this is what we found when doing the PMA manifesto, that it's varies widely from state to state. So like some states look at them as unincorporated association as a legal entity, and others don't. Some have adopted the Unincorporated Nonprofit Association Act, others haven't. So you want to make sure that you know what is happening in your state. And that's why it's really important to talk to either the girls over at the PMA manifesto, or I should say the ladies over there, or myself there, or at the East Coast PMA. Um, some of the other things that let's see, some general considerations. You want to know understand the nature of the PMA's activities and what you're going to be doing, because there's going to be different things you're going to have to. I don't want to use the word regulations, but different, I guess, regulations or issues that you're going to have to be able to handle, whether you are healthcare, education, food services. So, or providing food. So, if you have a local homestead and you're selling chicken eggs, you might have a different issue to deal with than somebody that's running a education association where kids are getting dropped off and they're unlicensed from the state, right? Also, the next thing, general consideration is the size and scope of the PMA. So, uh, if you have activities that could broadly impact the public, then you might have a better chance of the local government stepping in and having an interest in what you're doing if you have that expressive association, as opposed to more intimate association where it's really between you and your members. So again, these are things you have to think about. One, if you want to take your, let's say you have an LLC set up for mental health and some type of therapy, and you want to put that into an association. If you do that, these are some of the things that you need to think about that might become a challenge by doing that, because they're not going to make it easy for any of us to live a more free life and have less tyrannical ruling over us based on how this government is going. So there's some, I guess, federal law stuff to look at. So the constitutional rights, we have the First Amendment of the Constitution, which has the freedom of association, freedom of assembly that we've talked about before, or the freedom of assembly where the freedom of association is drawn from. And that the constitutional purpose idea is that individuals can come together to form an association for a lawful purpose without interference from the government. And that's where we really need to start focusing, I think, because we're using some of these other tactics to get around things and we're being left alone. But eventually, I think those tactics, like here in Connecticut, that statute that allows religious organizations to provide education to the members' children without being licensed by the state, is eventually going to go to the wayside unless we get some real reform going within this country and we get back to our constitutional republic fundamentals. So, uh, and that being said, check out the Constitutional Party. They're actually pretty good on that stuff. So, anyways, tax regulations. Again, the Internal Revenue Service provides guidelines for different types of organizations, whether you're a private club, you're a nonprofit, tax exempt, that sort of thing, if you're going to be asking for permission. And again, that's something you have to decide. I can't tell you what to do one way or another. So, those are kind of some of the federal law things I wanted to touch on real quick, because we are at like 32 minutes here. How much more do I have left? So the last thing, I guess, and this is where, I listened to some lady talk the other day with this guy about the win for the bonds, or bonds for the wind, or something like that. And I guess it was early on in the COVIDs that it was pretty big. And, what she said was really good until she got into the fringe patriot mythology stuff. And I'm like, oh, lady, you were doing so good until that point. And I think there's some merit to what they were doing. It's just when they start bringing the capital on their names, the, fictitious government and all this other stuff that, yes, there is a deep state, but, you know, uh, different types of constitutions. Anyways, I don't want to get into it. So everybody throws around the word common law a lot. And I think I'm going to get into a video on this because they're tossing around something that, or they're alluding to something that it's not. And so basically, in a nutshell, common law is nothing more than precedents set by other cases, plain and simple. So she was talking about maritime law, contract, tort law, no, trust law. Yes, there are different aspects of law within that. And yes, some of those are still considered, uh, uh, you know, uh, I want to say constitutional law, but that's not a common law, which you have trusts and tort stuff, which would fall under common law, but you also have statutory law and things that have come as laws have progressed. So when we look at associations, we look at case law, and these are cases that have been ruled on. These are different cases that talk about different aspects of being private and privacy. So there is a distinction between public and private entities that the courts have recognized. And I don't have any of those here. I thought I put them in my notes, but I don't. But anyways, I will find those for you. Maybe we'll go with those in another video. Let me know in the comments after you watch this, or if you're watching the replay. And then there are also challenges to regulatory authorities. There have been cases where associations have challenged state or federal regulated actions regarding their right to private association exempt from certain public regulations. And a lot of those outcomes haven't been great, to be honest with you. We've had some, but again, they've done stuff pro se. They start bringing the patriot mythology stuff, where they're all capital letter name there and they don't have to answer and all this other nonsense. And then they just end up losing their case. And I'm actually reading a very good, what is this called? This is from, and I will post this, the Flesh and Blood Defense. And this came out, let's see, in 2012, William and Mary Law Review, James uh, Erickson Evans. And so this goes into that whole, um, what's the word I want to put? Let me see if I can find it right here, where they put a lot of these legal jargon word salad together and basically say that, okay, well, because I am a living, breathing man, woman, what have you, of the flesh, this doesn't apply to me. And this goes really into depth. It's over 26 pages, 27 pages. I'm only in like the history of it, where it talks about the, oh, where is it? The Posse Comitatus Act. And basically, there was a group in the 70s and 80s, and they were, we'll call them right wingers, sovereignty, however you want to put it, how these people put it. Now, again, they talk about reclaiming their sovereignty and returning identification cards. But this also references a lot of case law, which is really good. And that's my point, is that anything that we do with associations or anything, whether it's tax protesting or anything like that, we want to make sure that, one, we're not skewing how the court opinion goes when it comes to a court case or case law. And we want to make sure that we're understanding the opinion. We're not just taking out one or two words and manipulating it to fit our narrative. We're actually reading it for the way it's set up. And I think that's going to be important going forward, because that will allow us to challenge a lot of the things that are being said in some of these other groups. And it will also give us a really good standing when it comes to defending ourselves that run associations or that are getting together as associations for a common goal. Maybe it's a couple different associations coming together. And I'm really thinking of, if I have the bandwidth in the next, when I, in the next 6 or 7 months, start putting together a legal association or a legal discussion where others that are interested in trust law, contract law, statutory law, common law, all that stuff, legalese in general, getting together and reading over court cases, discussing the court cases, really diving in and pulling them apart. And I'm thinking of setting up an association like that, where we can all get together and really utilize what is there and utilizing it the correct way, because there's a lot to be said for that. If you use it the right way, I myself have, one beat off one licensed attorney and just won a case against another, helping somebody else. So there's certain ways of doing things. And I think maybe having that type of group come together and then getting people like Dr. Graves to come in and talk, or some of these other individuals that are in the space that are actually using it the right way and not just saying, hey, I have this affidavit. Anyways, I'm getting off topic here. We're at 38 minutes. So these are just some of the considerations I wanted you to think about if you are thinking of taking your business and safeguarding it within an association, that it isn't going to be as easy as just switching everything over. Not that it can't be done, but I also want everybody to realize that there are going to be challenges and there are going to be certain things that you're going to have to do in order to run it properly. And maybe, there is the legal framework and autonomy that is very appealing to you, but okay, how do we enforce that, or how do we protect that? And we need to know these things. And the same as, what are some of the advantages and what are some of the challenges, right? There's always pros and cons, and we can't just go into anything haphazardly and say, hey, I want to just throw everything into this because I listened to some guy, from, I don't know, PMA Power, for example, or some of these other ones, PMA Solutions or Destiny 508 or Pro Advocate or some of the other ones that I can't think of off the top of my head, because they said, hey, I'm in the private now. I don't have to answer anything to any government authority. And then what happens is those people end up losing everything or get into serious fines because they aren't operating properly. So that being said, sorry we're so late today. We are at 39 minutes, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And again, please leave any comments after the fact. And I have a bunch of YouTube comments I got to get through, so maybe we'll do a question and answer tomorrow along with some other stuff. Until then, have a good evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
All over the country, and maybe there will be. People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.